Well, folks, welcome back to the Speed Street podcast. My name is Connor Daly. I'm an Indycar driver again, and there was quite a motor race to talk about over the weekend. There was a lot of it that makes me emotional because it's a situation where, I thought we had a real chance at being close to the podium or right near there or right on there maybe. And we found quite a bump in the road, a bit of a tornado type spin, bit of an activity that we will talk about. But we have a lot of debate about some of the results, a lot of debate about how it went down. So we're going to try to break all that down for you. We're going to try to give some people some information that might help formulate their opinions. But obviously, we know that opinions are free, and you can do whatever you want with them. So, Chase, I know you were streaming on Twitch during the IndyCar race. That's a great way to get people involved and kind of watching along. How'd that go? How did people respond to that?
You know, man, we had fun. For one, I just wanted to say that we also had a ton of praise about the racing. A lot of people were not expecting the race to be, as racy, as it was. So that's always a plus. But no, the stream was fantastic. Big shout out to everybody that came and joined that. Finding out that no one's really ever done that before, or nobody has ever really focused on that in the past. So yeah, definitely looking forward to doing that more from now and maybe even going into 2025. But everybody was loving it. We had a great time. I'm always just surprised when we see a lot of action on the track. So you get a lot of my raw reaction, and there was a lot of raw reaction in that race. There was a lot of big moments, a lot of key moments I'm ready to talk to you about. Want to understand some things as well. Just coming from being outside of the car in that perspective, got a lot of praise and a lot of comments to give on this one. So it's going to be big. And then for you as well, I hate that there was those unfortunate things. And trust me, everybody in our chat was we weren't the happiest of happies, but I finally got to rep the shirt that you had got me a while back, the CD, the Shoreline Drive. Nice. I got to rep that because I had no other black and green, so very fitting that was black and green. That worked out. Just overall, I was thoroughly entertained. Once again, IndyCar is just putting on display that they have one of the most incredible racing products on the planet, and it maybe not, CNBC. Maybe it shouldn't be on CNBC sometimes, but I will say that it is just great to see more and more people every week continuing to come over to IndyCar. So many comments of people saying, man, I did not realize how great this racing is when you're watching it on an oval. So, just steadily on that trip to the moon, dude. And that's the way we want to keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting, interesting race to talk about. There's a little bit of news that kind of popped today as well that we'll get into. We're recording this show on Monday. We have an interview, obviously, with Joseph Newgarden, the race winner, and try to be pretty honest about what's going on. We talk about the restart that everyone was talking about. I'm going to explain a lot about that and hopefully put it into a perspective that people will understand. I would say some people probably won't enjoy because it's not the answer that they want to hear because it's probably going to make it sound like maybe that like racing is hard and maybe it's on the cars that are behind also. I don't know. So there's a lot that goes on there that I just kind of want to put it in perspective and just give people what actually happens in the car, what we see and what we might feel. And then you can develop your opinions from that. I mean, I called Joseph Newgarden's restart a dick move. So you'll see, like I do say that. This is something I'm not going to be out here praising a bunch of things, but it's something that there is more to it than what you see. So we'll get into that. So let's talk a little bit about the results first. Let's get right into it. Joseph Newgarden, obviously a winner. Penske looked so dominant in qualifying, and when those cars were around me in the race, I mean, they're just insane. The way they drive, the way they look, it's pretty impressive. Scott McLaughlin, the pole sitter, was P2. Linus Lundqvist finished on the podium. Had no idea how that even happened. When I saw that was the result, I was like, where on earth did he come from? I feel like I didn't see him once during the race.
Saw some people upset about that too. They felt like that he shouldn't have done that because his teammate is trying to compete for points. And I have some comments on that one.
I mean, like Alex Palou finished fourth, but of course, I mean, Linus, any driver is going to go for the podium, and Palou is still probably quite happy finishing fourth because he had to have an engine penalty. Colton Herta was fifth, and that was the last car in the lead lap, which is crazy. It's only 5 cars finished on the lead lap, which again it just goes to show you how dominant the front of the field was. Just like basically the first 4, it was just the Penske cars and David Malukas essentially, because I had been around them a couple different times as we were obviously on a way different strategy trying to manage a car that was broken. But we had Felix Rosenqvist a lap down, finishing 6th. He showed a lot of speed, obviously, in qualifying, but he had to take an engine penalty as well. Nolan Siegel was 7th. Huge result for Nolan. And I don't know how that happened, honestly, because he got a speeding penalty, which should be an extreme detriment. And Santino Ferrucci also got the same penalty. But again, I am not entirely sure. I still have to watch more of the race. I watched the extended highlight package and stuff like that.
He was making some really good pass. Like he seemed very composed.
Yeah, but like the funny thing about Nolan Siegel finishing 7th though is like I passed him on the second to last restart. So like I also don't know where that speed, like a couple restarts, like I passed him and I'm like, all right, well, I don't know what's going on here. And then so there's just a lot there that like we'll get into it. So Marcus Armstrong finished 8th, probably just solid day. Solid day for him. Not really a super experienced oval guy. And boy, do we have a surprise for everyone here. Stingray Robb finished 9th. Best finish of his career by a long way. I don't know what to say here. Let's give credit where credit's due. Stingray, congratulations. Round of applause. Top 10 day for the 41 car. Again, not a clue how that happened because even after my car had no floor on it, Stingray sat behind me for, I want to say, half of the race, if not more. And when I saw him finishing in the top 10, I'm like, I don't know how that works. I don't know whether the pit stops played out the certain way. Like, obviously, we were a lap down already because of having to fix the car in the pits. But even still, like, he was one of the last cars running, like, around. And so I again, this is one of those races that with the way the yellows fall, the way things happen, you just never know what could happen. If you trap certain cars on certain laps, it's insane what can happen. Rinus VeeKay finished 10th. It looked like he was in the fight for his life the entire race. That car looked absolutely undrivable, but he is a very good driver. So once again, he, I believe, outdrives the equipment. Honestly, I am still upset with him, but it's really not his fault. It was just kind of a we'll talk a little bit more about that, but he continues to finish in the top 10, even though really I don't think was that fast. It was just kind of putting yourself in the right position and working through things. Scott Dixon was 11th. Scott had a wild stint at one point where I don't know what was going on with him, but he looked like he was fighting his car really aggressively. And then Santino Ferrucci finished 12th after a speeding penalty. And again, not really sure how that happened. I finished 13th. So hello, that's me. I finished 13th. And we know what happened there. So that was kind of crazy. Pietro Fittipaldi, 14th. Christian Lundgaard, 15th. Romain Grosjean, 16th. Ed Carpenter, 17th, after being involved in a very early accident. Will Power, Alex Rossi, Jack Harvey, David Malukas, Kyle Kirkwood, Graham Rahal, Marcus Ericsson, Kiffin Simpson, Pato O'Ward, and Catherine Legg rounding out the field. Obviously, all of those cars, except for Kyle. Well, Kyle was just doing laps until he couldn't make up any more positions. He got badly damaged in our accident together at the beginning. So, yeah, a lot of DNFs, a lot of cars that, were in position to have a great day, and they did not. And some people had their career best results, like Nolan and Stingray Robb. So just one of those events that's just weird. Like I look back at it and you're like, man, this is just, if you're that lucky person and if you get to take advantage of what happens in these races sometimes, top 10 or like top whatever. And it's just, it's a fascinating form of racing that we've got. So let's dive into it. So I'll say a little bit about my weekend. I had a great time. I would say right at the beginning of the weekend though, we obviously tested about a couple weeks ago, and we were quite confident at the test. We believe that we were the fastest, if not close to the fastest car there, depending on, well, after looking at our speed compared to the others. And everything that we did at the test to make the car better, when we got there and did the first run, all of it didn't seem to work. So very strange era of IndyCar, I guess, where like what we thought was going to work at the test, you hope to show up to the same track, very similar conditions, temperature-wise, and the car handles completely differently. So just a bit of a weird situation. It kind of, obviously the Andretti cars were fine, but it was a bit of a science project for us to kind of try to get back to being competitive, that where we thought we were at the test. And for qualifying, we busted our butts in that first practice session to try to tune this thing, to try to get it a little bit better. And we did make it better for sure. And I also found out that I now have to drive this car differently. So what used to make me fast at Gateway, what I could do with the car in the previous generation of the car, now does not work in this car with more weight. With the way the weight distribution is, it just does not work. And the reason I found this out was because of my teammate, Romain Grosjean. I mean, he is very good at driving this car on the limit, and I'm very familiar with that now. And seeing his data helps me understand, okay, I cannot drive the car the way I want to, so I have to change. But I didn't really see that until after the first session. So my first try at adjusting my style was for our qualifying run. And we were supposed to have 3 cars in front of us for a qualifying run, but Catherine Legg got DQ'd, Jack Harvey stopped, and then, we were third in line. So Catherine Legg was supposed to go, she got disqualified. Jack Harvey went and he had a hybrid issue or something, and so he didn't get to do a run. So we're the track cleaner. So I'm the first car out. That is usually not good. So the qualifying order is reverse championship order. So obviously the 78 car is down the order when it comes to the car points. But that is not a good time to go out and qualify. So we held on pretty well for the most part. And when at the end of qualifying, we were 12th overall out of the 27 cars. But after the engine penalties, we would end up 9th. So I have to say the track picks up a lot as you go. And like, for example, my qualifying run was like 177.9 miles an hour. The car that went right after me was Stingray, 172 miles an hour. So we were literally a full 6 mile an hour faster than the car that went next, which I think is pretty astounding, even though it's Stingray. But obviously, hey, top 10 guy, so maybe we feel better about ourselves now. So that is something that, again, goes into every little detail. And we go to the night session. So the night practice session, we actually have to kind of keep track of tires. So we run the Highline session, and they give us a different set of tires for that session. So that set of tires is actually not anything like the left sides were Indy 500 tires that were left over, and right sides were a different compound. So that was basically just to put rubber down. There was no use in us doing any, setup change. You're not even allowed to do any setup changes during the Highline runs. But it was encouraging to do that run. And then we all go to the practice session. And again, the practice session starts later than the race starts. So when it gets cooler and darker, everyone is feeling like heroes, right? We're all like, oh yeah, we're all going to be great. People are running lower downforce. People are trying all kinds of different downforce levels. And for us, we feel like we've made another step forward in the car. We feel very competitive. We're looking at average lap times on these long stints, and we were about third quickest overall when it comes to like average lap times. Let's say a 20-25 lap run or a 20-25 lap segment. And it was a lot of fun. I don't know if I felt super like everyone was going to be able to pass, but I tried hanging out at the top side of Pato O'Ward because he was the class of the field that evening. Pato was insanely strong. And I hit the wall. Like we literally ran the high lane on the way into 1 and 2. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to try and see if this still works even after the session had run. It does not work. So you obviously saw Josef Newgarden spin in the race because of the marbles. I get in those same marbles and just brushed the right rear on the wall. Just bent,
tap.
Yeah, just bent the suspension a little bit on that one. But it definitely gave me a lot of experience for what I was to probably expect for the next day. So it was a really strong weekend for us. We were really, really proud of starting where we were starting. I think my first race really essentially with the first race weekend with the hybrid unit, first race weekend with a new team. I think we have a lot to be proud of. But Chase, I want to know from your perspective what you thought about heading into the weekend or heading into the race day. Obviously, we had qualifying stories. You had Colton crashing in qualifying, which was, again, kind of a crazy thing to see. I did not expect that out of him. I thought he was going to be one of the contenders for pole. But again, Scotty Mack absolutely nailed his laps and ended up on the pole. What were your thoughts kind of heading into it, you thought?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I think we all know that if it wasn't for Colton spinning, I feel like he probably would have gotten the pole there. I mean, he was running pretty quick.
Very close.
And it also shows just how tough it is because you can have the best car, you can have a great driver, and these little things can happen to everyone. I mean, we saw it happen to Colton in practice. We saw it happen to Joseph in the race, and he won the race. I mean,
yes,
it's just one of those deals where when you're out there, and then two, for me looking at it, and I'm obviously, I'm not in the car like you are, and I'm watching from a different perspective. And, you know, and now after hearing you talk about how some of the things that you used to do that you can't do now with this car, it makes the unpredictability a little bit higher going into the rest of this season. But I felt that, you know, especially I paid a lot of attention to you and Roman, obviously. And, you know, even though they had the engine penalties, you were able to move up into the top. I think you had a top 10 starting spot, P9, if I'm correct. I mean, it just goes to show that it doesn't matter who the team is or what's happening. Like, everybody is kind of in this learning curve moment right now. And that goes from drivers to in the pit. So I really didn't have an opinion truly formed. I was just kind of like, I had my suspicions, or I trusted kind of my intuition on what I thought would happen in this race. But if anything, I think for me with Colton, we can continue this conversation of great driver, great team. It just feels like maybe there's some kind of a mental hurdle, or there's some kind of a like the planets aren't aligning,
just a missing element
yet for him to be able to have that superstar season that we all know he's capable of.
Now, I want producer Bobby as well to kind of I forget what our podium picks were, so Bobby, if you can text that to us. I completely forget, and I would love to know how I did. I forgot. So I was
going to say, I think you had Colton.
Okay.
You definitely had Colton. You had
Tough
Joseph.
Pick for me.
Congratulations.
Okay, I had Joseph. All right.
And I think your third one, I can't 100% remember the third guy that you had, but I know that
Bobby will text it to it. Who did you have?
Yeah.
What were your picks?
I had Scott McLaughlin.
Okay, strong.
I had Pato.
Okay, he was going to be on the podium, dude. I think he was very, very good.
Yeah, and I can't wait to dive into that one and ask you some questions on that one too. That one just still blows my mind to this day. And then I had Scott Dixon, which had a very out of form day.
Yes,
and I think that
he was struggling.
I felt that a little bit with Ganassi as a whole going into the weekend from practice qualifying. It's just like, you know, we had Scott Dixon. As soon as these changes kind of came out, Scott Dixon's car fails on the first race with the hybrid series, and now we're still seeing Ganassi, I feel like, trying to still get the kinks out. I guess, like, I felt like they would have had a little bit more of an advantage going into this, being one of the larger teams, especially fielding as many cars as they are. But tough
day for Ganassi overall. Like, you had Kiffin in the wall, which I guess isn't as surprising as many people thought. But Scott Dixon looked like he was struggling. Alex Palou had to start kind of back, but he was still good, obviously. And then Linus on the podium. So very, very different days for Ganassi. But yeah, my picks were Alex Rossi, Pato, and Joseph. So obviously I was a little bit off. Alex involved in a very large accident. Pato
hit the X Factor once again in an IndyCar race.
Tried to fly away. But yeah, it was, I think in retrospect, Alex Rossi probably would have been close. He was having a decent day. I would say, when I got to run around him at the beginning, we were definitely a little bit better than he was. But yeah, I want to kind of explain something about qualifying. So qualifying, when I look at it, and again, this is a very, you try to analyze things correctly and just explain to people how difficult it is that what we're doing. But when you look at the onboard, like if you did a side-by-side comparison of, let's say, Colton Herta's onboard and Kyle Kirkwood's onboard, right? They both qualified well. Colton should have. But those cars both looked like they were on the edge of control and like almost in the wall, breaking every bit of that car. And, Kyle survived. Colton had a broken vehicle and kind of a cool save, but definitely found the limit. And then you look at Scott McLaughlin's onboard video, and it does not even, there's no corrections. It is very smooth. There is no lift in 3-4, essentially. It's just, it's hard to explain that difference because, again, a lot of people think, oh, IndyCar is so similar, but like it's not, because if you see how different those cars are to drive, and Joseph talks a little bit about it, like when they're on very aggressively and they are on very good and they will beat the crap out of you. But it doesn't work out all the time, right? Like they did not win every race this year, right? But when you see when they're on, like Indy 500 qualifying, for example, this year, so many of us were saving our lives, trying to put together a good few laps, and then Penske front row. And again, it looks easier. And me as a driver, I get frustrated because you're like, how is that possible? But they are clearly doing things that are the best. Like, and it's not, I'm kind of surprised that other teams haven't quite found that yet, but we see Alex Palou dominate on road courses and make Penske look silly. So again, it's not a consistent thing, but
that's got to be more of a driver thing too, right? So I mean, like obviously, when you look at Penske, you have Scott, you have Joseph, and you have Will. Will being the oldest veteran, Scott coming from more of that road course racing background, just getting his first oval, and then Joseph being, what everyone calls the Oval King. I feel like they have a really good arsenal to execute, but you're 100% spot on, and I think it just has a lot to do maybe with the science behind this engine. Maybe there's something in the science, something in the data that Penske has figured out about, and been able to give to their drivers. But then again, the drivers have to execute that. So I think it's just an all around, the science, the drivers, everything being put together, just really representing that big team that we all know Penske to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's more so on the mechanical grip side. The engine stuff is more handled really on the Chevy department, but Chevy and Hondas, but what they're able to do to produce grip when they do, it's very impressive. And I think it's just such a separating factor. And visually, all of the drivers say the same thing. Anyone who doesn't drive a Penske, you look at the onboard video clip from Scott McLaughlin getting the pole, you're like, that just looks easy. And it was the same thing at Indy too. You look at their 3 cars qualifying runs, they're on the front row for a reason. And so, yeah, again, it's very impressive. And again, people don't like it. People don't like the dominance. But, Penske's not going to win the championship this year, I don't believe. I think Alex Palou is still going to win the championship. But when they're on in such an incredible fashion. So, again, that was kind of what I gained from qualifying. And let's get into the race. I mean, the race, very hot. We wish it was a real night race. The conditions that we were going green in were fine because the sun's still up, but the majority of that race really was annoying because you can't see in 3-4. And that's a very, like, oh, you shouldn't complain, but like vision is kind of important, if I'm honest. And I actually would love, I mean, I think Kevin Simpson might have crashed because he couldn't see the curb. Like, I think he got down close to the curb, and the way the sun shines off that curb, the sunset race time for Gateway at that time of year in August is terrible. I'm not going to lie. Like, it needs to either be a night race or a day race because the vision makes it so much worse for us to drive. And again, we got to have, whatever TV window is possible. And sadly, our TV window got screwed once again because NASCAR had a rain delay. And of course, with the way things are now, with IndyCar going to Fox, NBC is probably not going to treat us with any preferential treatment. So we got put on to CNBC again, which is such a shame because no one watched the race, I'm sure. And again, we appreciate those that did, but it's much less easy for the mainstream audience to get a hold of. So
it did go over to USA at some point.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah,
but you miss elements, right? And if it's and we really wanted to have more of the Xfinity rollover, right? Like you get the folks that were watching Xfinity, boom, we're going to roll right in IndyCar. Just
that hasn't happened a lot this year.
Yeah, just a tough one, honestly. A tough one for the weather.
Think it's as simple as a time change for the start of this race that's going to fix so many things because of that glare.
Yeah, the glare was not good. So that was one thing I wanted to say. But our race, like right out the gate, what's interesting yet again, and maybe this is my inexperience with the hybrid so far, but my start I thought was good. And then what I felt in the car, like the very first couple laps, it was so different once again to practice. And maybe this is with how heavy the car is now and how different some of our mechanical setups are and just setups in general. And when the car is full of fuel, I've only there's really not a lot of time that we've done with full fuel loads. It changes the balance of the car super aggressively. Like I had to get very, very aggressive on my tools inside the car, the rear bar, the front bar, the weight jacker, just to get the car to turn. So I actually lost like 2 spots after the first lap because my car would not turn at all. And I'm not really sure why. Like we got to the yellow, which was very early on, thankfully. And, I'd lost a position to Pillow. I was behind Renus. I was behind Armstrong, who Armstrong started next to me. But I was like, man, I didn't really expect that because normally at the start of these races, like I'm pretty on it. It's certainly on the ovals. And then when we did the restart, I was like, okay, well, I just have to switch lanes because I started on the bottom. I would have loved to have started on the outside, but we were kind of forced to the bottom and got locked in on the bottom in the first initial start. So the next start, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to get super aggressive on my tools to cause the car to rotate because I needed the thing to turn. You have to get it to turn or else you're just a sitting duck. And then I got it. Then we finally figured it out a little bit. And I don't know if the tires came up to temperature. I don't know if we burned a little bit more fuel off. But the car came alive on that second restart. Or on the first restart, and past Pillow, past my teammate Grosjean, was past Kirkwood, and then the disaster happened. So we're going into turn 1, and I posted this video clip on all my social channels. So and we'll put it up on YouTube as well. I'm going to put it up there when I get a cool thumbnail. But what happens is I was using the top side, but Renus's car, and I feel bad for him. I know people like sometimes like are saying like, oh, of course he's going to give, crap to that team. But like, I've never said Renus is a bad driver. Like, I think Renus is still one of the most talented.
Renus a lot on this program.
Yeah, I mean, I think Renus is one of the most talented drivers that I've ever been teammates with. And I know that my engineer came around before the race and was like, yeah, everyone's at the same downforce level except for the 21 car. Renus, those guys had chosen to be trim, a little bit more trim than anyone else, which means the car is going to be harder to drive in traffic, harder to drive in general. You hope that it pays off maybe later in the evening, but it did not. I mean, from lap 1, he is saving his life in that car. And again, congrats for not wrecking it. He's in the top 10 once again, so I looked silly. But I believe that is purely because of his ability to control that thing. You look at his teammate, and again, Ed qualifies in the back in that 20 car, and I think the separation there is truly Rinus's ability to just drive that thing on the ragged edge. And sadly, I was a victim of it. And again, it's not his fault. Like, this isn't Rinus's fault, but when you're racing this close and something like that happens, and it's at such a weird area of the corner that I have no idea how his car was that loose that late in the corner of turn 2. But I popped to the inside because Armstrong goes to the outside of Rinus, and Rinus is kind of like in the middle of the track, which isn't really either lane. So I have actually some clean air on the bottom. My car hooks up great, and I have timed this fantastic run to potentially get both cars going down that next straight. And as soon as Rinus starts to lose it, I'm like, his car is like fully sideways. And so when that happens, when we're all so close in speed, there is no coming back from that. Like, where that was in the corner, I got off the throttle immediately, and I get collected from behind. And so it's not, the saddest part. I mean, I wish I would have just kept on the throttle and just plowed through Rinus and just spun him the heck out. But the problem is you can't do that because on an oval, you never want to make contact with anyone. And realistically, easiest thing for me would have been just like, well, I'm just going to wreck this guy and drive straight through him. But that makes it worse then. Then it means potentially that I'm going over the top of him like Rossi did later. Once you hit wing to tire contact is really bad.
Could really mess up your chances of getting back in that thing and trying to get the result that you actually did. I mean, for you to be able to bounce back the way that you did, regardless of the cautions and the cars that were collected, it still shows what you were able to do, and it's all because of that decision you made to let off the gas there. Because let's say you stay on it, your day's done.
It could have gone way worse, and sadly, I really just feel bad for the guys behind me because it was not only my teammate, but it was also Kyle Kirkwood, who didn't deserve to be in that position either. But I texted him, I was like, dude, we couldn't do anything. He's like, no, I get it. Like, it was like, that's on like Rinus for, having that activity. But again, these things happen. It's just, it's not Rinus's fault. But again, that one thing leads to another. And sadly, both me and Kyle and Roman were like very victimized by that. And
that's racing, man.
Somehow got it spun around, and thankfully when I got it turned around, I'm like, okay, well, I'm still going. Unless like it felt like I got destroyed. I felt like the impact that I got from behind was like absurd. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna come to pit lane and we got to figure this out. And so eventually, like, got back to pit lane, and I think where we really made a mistake, and again, as a team, I think we realized this, is we went a lap down trying to fix the car, and we should not have done that because we were still in the lead lap. When we pitted, obviously the team was trying to evaluate what was damaged, what wasn't, because I didn't really know. I thought the steering wheel was still straight, but we knew the front wing was broken. We knew we needed tires because we definitely flat spotted the tires. But could we have done something differently? Absolutely. But you're not often changing a wing on an oval, right? Like, if you're changing a wing on an oval, like, that's very rare. Like, if you have to change your wing, the rest of your car is probably screwed too. But we did that, and it takes a while to change the front wing now because you have to plug it in, with a small, it's not just 2 bolts off and then on. It's like you have to plug in a little special plug for safety that's in the car as well, and electronics as well. So what we should have done is change the tires first, right back out on track. And we realized this as a team. This was a mistake from us as a group because I think we could have kept ourselves on the lead lap. But instead, we changed tires and the wing at the same time, and we lost a lap. And that pretty much killed our entire day. It didn't matter. I mean, our floor was destroyed too, the left rear quarter of the floor, which, again, you're fighting for every bit of downforce possible at this track. And we were out of tires, right? We had to use a used set of tires because we needed new tires for the rest of the race. And tires and fuel, because we were running so much downforce at this track, you were never ever going to do 3 stops, but you had to save fuel to do 4. And a lot of people did 5 pit stops. Like, that's crazy. There's no other track other than the Indy 500 that's like that. And so really from then on, we were just trying to do something extremely different. I was fighting for my life trying to drive a car with less downforce than everyone else. Just a bunch of bits that were falling off. I got a hole in my hand for the very first time in a long time. I got a big blister on my left hand because it's
back, dude.
Bit of vibration, and the rear bar adjuster was broken. And this is a track where you're almost adjusting the rear bar every lap. And so I'm trying to push that thing forward and then pull it back. Quite a physical effort
it's not something electronic. This is an actual
this is
lever.
an actual, you're having to change it. And so I'm pushing at this thing, pulling on it. And so it just became one of those days where, gosh, you're just hoping for a lucky yellow to maybe get a wave by, and it just never went. Everything that went wrong could have went wrong for us. But every time we had an opportunity to pass cars, even with my damaged vehicle, the last restart, for example, we're 14th. We got a couple cars on the same lap. They're a little bit separated from us, though, sadly. But we still passed like 3 cars on the restart. Got myself from 14th to 13th, past Pietro Fittipaldi, and I wish I would have got Santino and Dixon, but they were just like 4 or 5 cars ahead of me, just in line, so there was no way we were going to get there. But yeah, just a real tough situation, and it was the hardest I've worked in a long time to finish just kind of wherever we were because of how little downforce we had, but I knew we needed points. The team needed points. We were like, hey, we just got to keep fighting through this because $1 million is on the line. And the craziest and saddest part about it is one of the cars that we're fighting, of course, which is, usually finishes last all the time, which we know. And again, this is no offense to Stingray, but that's just true. A guy who qualified essentially last, finishes 9th. Stingray, again, great job. Hang the banner, top 10. I mean, we will not trash that. That's a top 10 day for Stingray. But that then gets him a huge amount of points to put him a little bit ahead of us. So it'll be a bit of an interesting journey through these next few races for us to acquire that $1 million. And now we're fighting against the 20 car as well, which oddly enough, that's hilarious. So
you have a lot stacked up right now. And I thought it was funny too. Like, it's going to be really fun to watch the rest of the season out because like, not only are we watching a championship or not only are we watching the race for entertainment, we're watching your race to get this car into that championship point. So I love that part of it. I did have somebody clap back at me on X in your defense because I was kind of, and I think it's just because like there's still a lot of people in the IndyCar space that don't really maybe understand my humor or haven't really watched my content before, but I'm just like, big story of the race is Stingray Rob, P10. This is huge. And like somebody is like, this is not good. This is why. This is not good for Connor. This is that. And I'm just like, just think about my voice and how this would be said. It was just one of those moments where I felt like, it's that there's no other way for me to say it. It's a shit or get off the pot moment. Okay.
Yep.
And it's like Stingray, out of all these finishes, out of all this time, an announcement comes and happens, and now we see him it's like the light switch went on. I don't know.
Yeah, but there's really like
the rest of the season. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, though, it's like these results are very much not based purely on performance. Like there truly is. And I'm sorry to say, but like, if I got a lucky finish, like I even think 13th, I'll tell you, is super lucky because a bunch of people crashed, right? Like, it seems like I'm a hero, but I'm not. Like, I just drove around a car that was broken for most of the day, and we just kind of kept trying to get lucky on weird strategies. But it played out. What makes it fun,
though, is watching that strategy play out, man. Like, me at least.
It played out the way it played out. So again, good job to Stingray, but it definitely makes it a little spicy for the points. So I was obviously kind of in a bunch of different spots, kind of looking at how other people were racing. There was a lot of fuel saving. Like, crazy to think that, the way these cars were so draggy, we ended up being in a position where so many people had to save fuel, and then so many people decided to cancel that and just keep pushing. Then you had, random yellows that kind of just Didn't work out for a lot of people because we obviously see that 5 cars finished on the lead lap, which I think is silly and it's a bit of a shame. But that just goes to show you how dominant the cars at the front were.
The purists loved it.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, let's talk a little bit about, I think, the big moment that everyone wants to talk about, the red flag, the restart accident, because I was on the racetrack for this activity. I did witness it. I saw my life flash before my eyes. I saw poor Jack Harvey and everyone just get destroyed. But there was a lot of debate about this, a lot of debate because of the leader being Josef Newgarden. Now, if this was a different human in the lead, maybe the debate would be slightly different. But obviously, Joseph's had a lot of controversy this year. Controversy.
No friends Newgarden. That's what some are calling him.
Yeah, a lot of people. But, he also found the password to his Twitter account the other night, and he was all of a sudden interacting with people. I honestly thought he wasn't on the internet anymore. I thought he just had an agency for that, and people were doing his tweets. But found out that he can, in fact, respond to people. And the funniest part is he was mainly just responding to happy people, being very encouraging. And there was one human being that I saw, who gave me a bunch of crap. Obviously, she didn't tag me, but I saw this account that was like condescending and saying terrible things about me for responding to people on the internet, and she's getting involved in the conversation. I'm like, oh, that's funny how it works. Now we can respond to people. Like, now it's cool to have feelings. All right. I mean, Joseph did kind of say a couple things to some people that were like, oh, interesting. Maybe we should look at these facts. But anyway, that's beside the point. It is funny to see. But Joseph, thankfully, I'm glad that Joseph got on the internet and talked to people, all in a very kind way. But the restart, let me explain, I guess, the rules of the restart. Now, we have a restart zone. Now, in NASCAR, if you watch NASCAR, they have a Geico restart zone, right? And you see it painted on the walls. It's there. Like there's no debate. You're either in or you're out. And you can go at any point in that zone. Now, we have the same thing, but it's not you don't see it physically with your eyes. You can't see it. In driver's meeting, it's like, here's the green line, and then here's the other green line, and there's like a little gray area. Okay, you can go anytime in between there. And they've been cracking down a lot recently on the restart violations, because at Indy, people were jumping the restarts like crazy, and it just became such a disaster that they started to, give people drive-through penalties. Like if you're out of line, if you're passing someone before we call green, like that's drive-through penalty. And that makes sense. I agree with that, because you cannot mess these restarts up because it just looks silly and it's a disaster. And now I thought there was a lot of people that were still jumping out of line on these restarts that I thought would have been a penalty, but I was wrong. So again, maybe we were already green and they were jumping out of line, but the way Joseph, so the leader has full control to go whenever he wants in that restart zone. There is no, yes, if you go early, that helps everyone in the back of the field because there's not as much time for us to make all these weird decisions about accelerating, then braking, trying to get a good run. And so, when you go earlier, that's good for the health of the rest of the field. Now, as a leader, believe it or not, I've actually been a leader before, recently in Indianapolis. I was leading for restarts, and I know when the restart zone is. Indy, you'd like to go really as almost late as possible because you don't want people to get a big run on you down the front straight and get passed by 4 cars. So Joseph, I think, was trying to do the same thing. You want to go as late as possible and different from the last time that you went. So you make people think and you make people work harder. So I was the very last car in line. So all of what was going on, the accordion effect, it's basically times 10 when you're the further you are deep in the field. So you notice that they've given us the ability to have about a car length's gap between the car in front of us, just to kind of have a bit of a room to move or maybe get a bit of a jump if you want. But when Joseph goes so late, the driver behind is immediately you're trying to react the best possible. So you're almost doing this moving forward and back, like, and you're heavy on the brakes. So we're using brake and throttle to try to build boost as well. So it's not necessarily just, we are fully like maximum brake as much as we can, almost on the verge of locking the tire, and then also on the throttle so we can build boost so we can jump when we go. But as you get closer to that restart zone, the cars behind the leader slowly get closer to one another because you want to time yourself moving forward rather than backwards when he goes. So the accordion effect that happens from P2 onwards is massive. Like for me, Joseph, and the series looked at the data, and we're going to ask him about it. You guys are going to hear his thoughts about it. And I'm not trying to, I'm not here to advocate for what Joseph did. I don't think it was a good restart. I don't think that going that late, that's not a good for the safety of the field type move. But he doesn't have to care about that, right? His job is to go whenever he wants in that restart zone. Is it the very end? Maybe we need a painted section. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe we need full-on graphics on the television that say orange line to orange line in this fictitious graphic zone. And if you're outside of that zone and you go, then it is wrong. But we can't see the zone. So we don't actually know when the end of it is. He does, because they obviously study the driver's briefing sheet. But I'm just trying to tell everyone that, like, as much as everyone wanted to blame Joseph for that, there's no penalty because he didn't break a rule. Like, I'm sorry, but if you go at the very end of the restart zone, and honestly, like, they've looked at the data, race control looked at the data, and Joseph will tell you too, like, you can see an acceleration or not acceleration, and the only time, and again, he'll tell you about it, the only time he accelerated was when he got hit from behind by his teammate. So I know that everyone else other than Joseph is unhappy about it. I'm unhappy about it. I don't think it was a cool move. His teammate gave him the finger. His other teammate, Scott McLaughlin, probably not happy either because he almost got wrecked too. But I think that it's part of the racing that we are doing right now. Everyone has to try to get the best run possible on the restart. It's on us. It's on us to not hit each other. It really is. But it's how the chips fell, and that brings up a point too, because for one, if you have an overlay, and I feel like we're going to have that with Fox next season, because that's going to take away a lot of the debate issue, is having that overlay of that restart zone. Fox was able to do that for NASCAR. I don't see why they won't be able to do that for IndyCar. I think it would be nice it would be nice for sure to be like, hey, here's Joseph's throttle trace and his brake trace. Here's his live mile per hour, because you have that. And you'd be like, make your own decisions. And then you could even compare it to the cars behind him and what they were doing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that part I was going to bring up was the data, right? Yeah. That's something you'll hear us talk about in the interview with Joseph. But I just want you to kind of dig into this. Like, why is this data so hard for the public to access? Are drivers able to put this data out there for the fans to see, for just for the I guess the overall health of debate when it comes to IndyCar? Well, I think our data is very much, people want to keep it undercover. I guess if you really want to get technical, does if Penske posts a screenshot of the data, compared to Scott's because he was right behind him or whatever, does that reveal any of your gear ratio information? Does that reveal anything else that might be different? I don't know. It shouldn't. You should be able to just highlight, hey, this was Joseph's constant speed and this was Scott's constant speed. And then you can be like, hey, we'd like Colton's too, or whoever was third or fourth, Will Power. You know what I mean? So I do believe that is possible. Yes. And I do hope that we get the access to that. But as we saw with the Austin Dillon and Denny Hamlin thing, people won't even look at that and believe it. So I think that there's always going to be those types of thoughts, but facts are fact at the end of the day. You're going to always have people disagree with stuff, or people that. And Joseph, it's fun to disagree with Joseph right now. It's fun to hate Joseph. Like, everyone seems to love their pitchforks and their torches, going to his house and be like, oh, he's this guy. He's on the front step now, though. He's back on the X. He's ready. He is back on the Twitters, and he sees it. After talking to him, I definitely know that. But I just felt like trying to explain, like, as someone who was last in line, like I said, I'm like full throttle in third gear. Like I am already thinking that we're going, and then I'm having to hit the brakes hard in the middle of 3-4. So the accordion effect is insane. Joseph might be doing 80 to whatever the pace car speed is, 80 miles an hour, 85 miles an hour, whatever it is, for the entire length of 3-4. But the rest of us idiots are like holing the mail down the back straight to try to get bunched up, and everyone's trying to warm their tires and get the last bit of brake heat. And I'm like full chat all the way to the set, and Nolan Siegel's right in front of me. And I'm like, all right, I got to get this guy too, because I thought we were on the same lap. Turns out we weren't. And then, all right, we're going, but it's an explosion in front of me. Cars are flying around, and I'm going so fast that I legitimately have to fully lock my brakes, like everything locked to get through this gap. And it was definitely, and it's very hard to see. Like, you would have thought, me being the last car in line, like, oh, you'd have plenty of time to get it. It's like, no, that happens so fast that you're like, oh my gosh, this is all happening. And it just goes to show you how difficult it is. So again, you can for sure form your own opinion. Like, I don't think he should have gone that late. Can he do that? Yeah, I'm sorry, but he can. Like, there's a zone, and I think it'll be debated for a while, and it's fun to debate it right now. But is there any penalty that's there? I don't think so. I'm sorry, but do I think it's a cool thing to do? No. And I talked to Joseph about that. I tell him, I'm like, hey, look, you guys will see in the interview. So, have your opinions on that. That's totally cool. Was it a bit of a shady thing to do? Yeah, but guess what? Shoot, I would have done it too if I'm about to try to win a race. You know what I mean? I would do anything to win a race. You know what I mean? Like, you got to take the rules to the whatever level you can, and you got to, obviously we saw them break the rules, and they got, cheaters, they got disqualified. So I'm sorry, but this was not breaking any rules. So I believe that, and again, that's my opinion only because I know how this stuff works. Like, the gray areas. I hate to be devil's advocate, but like, it's on everyone else for trying to get these crazy jumps. Like, it is. And it went wrong. And I believe that's the risk you take, though, right? Yeah, like, everyone thinks that Joseph went and didn't go, but everyone is doing that same thing. So, right. I think, again, hopefully that helps people put in perspective. Like, what we're trying to do is very inch perfect. It's millimeter perfect with these restarts. You've got to nail it. And if you don't, you get completely destroyed. So that was kind of my thoughts on that. And again, we'll have Joseph on to be able to tell us his perspective, and I know he wants to get the data out there. I know he does. But who knows? Maybe Penske will allow that to happen. Maybe not.
Photoshop's easy. You could doctor some things on there. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. No one believes anything out of that camp now. So I get it.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter. So just don't put any competitive information out there. Yeah. Just show where that's the zone, and that's what happened.
Yeah, but obviously, Joseph's still pretty impressive after spinning. He span right in front of me, spun right in front of me. And that was kind of wild. To see him come back and win from there is,
he commented on it on the program too. And he said it on the radio at the end of the race. He was like, guys, that was all you, commending the team.
Oh yeah.
And it really was.
Incredible,
because that 5-second stop was everything. Now,
unbelievable.
It was unbelievable, but it really just shows, like, for me, that was the bus bros fight to the death is what that was. Like, it was Scotty Mack and it was Joseph. And to see that team be able to put that kind of a time together to get him out, when he said that on the radio, he was like, guys, that was all you. Thanks so much for that. Yeah. Like, commending the team, because it really was. If it wasn't for that quick stop like that, I think we see Scotty Mack up top. And then,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. So there were a couple other things that happened in this race, too, that I think are worth talking about. The David Malukas and Will Power crash. Again, that was right in front of me as well. Not right in front of me, but I was the next car through that corner. That one, I know that David Malukas said that Will Power came and shouted at him. David Malukas was not in the wrong there at all. I think that was very much like, I'm happy to call out Will Power on that one. I think that's on Will Power. David Malukas was fully on the bottom. He cannot go any lower. If you go lower on that curb, you're crashing. But the driver on the outside is also supposed to give a lane if that car is there to the car that's, because where do you think he's going to go? He's not going to disappear. You know what I mean? And David Malukas is fast. You know, he's trying to take the fight to the Penskes. He's proved all weekend that he was, you know, capable of running very much at the front. Extremely impressive drive by him. And I'm really not entirely sure what Will Power was doing there. I don't know how that's I don't really know how that's not a penalty, and I don't believe he got a penalty for it.
No,
but
that was a race for the lead, essentially, too. I don't know if you knew that at that moment where things were. I know you're in the car, you're focused on your race, so I mean, it's like definitely I have a lot more of focus with everything happening in the scope of the whole race. But that was essentially the race for the lead at that point because of how the pit strategies were working out.
Yes.
So I could only think, you know, like Will, obviously, maybe the team on the radio, they had to know that. But when you do watch David, like, it's very unfortunate for David because, dude, he put together an insane qualifying time. I mean, he was getting this car so close to the wall in qualifying and then coming out down.
Very impressive
like
run.
A magician of sorts in the car. So to see him in that moment, that was obviously the most exciting moment for him and for Malukas fans. Him coming out there on that outside, it was just, there's multiple perspectives with it, but it did look like Will just kind of pulled up a tad bit. There was the room there between Malukas and between Will. So, you know, you could either say, Will could easily say, oh, I'm just coming off of my turn. I'm not lifting. I mean, I know he's there, but I'm still running my line. And then with David, I mean, you could have that perspective of, oh, he pushed up on purpose, and that's what put me into the wall. So either way it went, it was unfortunate for David. He was very emotional in the interview after the after the race. It
was going to be one of his career days for sure. And I think what happened, you know, when you get down on the bottom like that, and you'll see it in my onboard video too that I posted. You know, I was on the bottom of two cars, you know, or at least one car when we all got together. But you can make the bottom work, but the top side really has the momentum. However, we had been green a long time. So Will Power does not want to stay up top because we saw what that did to Joseph Newgarden, right? Joseph Newgarden stayed up top and he spun. And so Power definitely wants to try to pinch Malukas as much as possible, but you can't do that. Like that could have easily taken them both out, but you see the contact made. It comes from Will Power's side because you can't go any lower. Like David can't go any lower. So I think David definitely got, I talked to him a little bit after the race, and I don't know what he seemed like definitely very upset, but I was like, dude, that was on Power. Like, he definitely like came down on you. He's like, yeah, I know. And then like his dad, I actually talked to his dad too, David's dad. He was like, you got to talk about this on the podcast this week. And I'm like, I plan on talking about it on the podcast. So like, thank you, Captain Malukas. Like, well, I get it. Like, I'm completely on their side here because, I mean, we'll call out a move if it happens. And I'm not going to lie, I think that's on Power. And it was very sad to see that for that Malukas entry and that team, because I think that team deserved to be on the podium without a doubt. So that was a wild one.
Driving.
Yeah, that was a wild one. The whole incident at the beginning, which we didn't really talk about it much, but Catherine Legg hitting Ed Carpenter, that was just sad. There's no other way to describe that other than that was just tough it was tough to watch.
My kid was here for that one. He was just like, the elf has been decommissioned. That's what he said.
That was tough. Yeah, that was tough. I hate to see that for Catherine, but you know, I do believe that one was on Catherine. She's a friend of the show, but I think that was a bit of an aggressive move for Catherine there to make. So probably not ideal, but you know what? It happens. Obviously, you thought I was going to blame the 20 car. I don't think that was Ed's fault at all. So that was a shame. But a lot of mechanical issues. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Pato. I did not realize he went out that early with a mechanical issue. I saw that in the post race, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't even see him get out of line and have to pit. But really interesting because Marcus Ericsson, who was having a very good race, had a mechanical issue. I'm about halfway through the race, and I'm following Lundgaard, and Graham Rahal's engine is spitting smoke at me. I'm like, hey, this might be the yellow that we need because Graham is pouring smoke out of his engine. So we're driving around. We must have driven around for like 4 or 5 laps. And every time Graham gets on the power in 1 and 2, the thing is smoking like crazy. And I'm like, okay, this is, but you also hate that because his teammate's right in front of me, Christian. And so I'm sure Christian's talking to his team like, hey, if Graham starts pouring oil out of this thing, guess who's crashing first? Christian and then me. And so I'm like, you have to drive into every corner just hoping that smoke doesn't turn into an oil smoke. And thankfully it did not. Graham did get eventually.
Off the track
yeah,
too,
he did eventually get off the track. But
yeah,
that was kind of a wild thing to see.
One people were asking about because like that was one that you really didn't hear a lot about. I learned about that through just a message in the middle of the race in the chat because they didn't really broadcast or talk much about it. If they did, I missed it. But yeah, for him to get off the track, that was huge. But
that was important, yeah.
With Pato, man, like we saw this issue with Scott Dixon, the first race with the hybrid car. We saw Ericsson had his issues, but the thing that I have an issue with, I guess, is like McLaren, the team, the name. How it's like you think about that name, you think about this team, even though, yeah, they are, I guess you could still call them kind of a newer team in IndyCar, but it's like with that big of a name, with that big of a staff, with that big of understanding, it's like, how do these things happen to such a, top talent driver in a top talent car? Why are we having engine issues? And that's really where I'm coming from. It's just you don't expect to see that out of teams like McLaren. Like, I think I look at NASCAR, true. Right? That Hendrick had an engine issue with Kyle Larson like 2 years ago. That's the last you ever heard of it. Very rare occurrences. But Pato's been very vocal about this engine. He's been very vocal about these problems that are happening. And I feel like this is like maybe twice or 3 times something like this has happened to Pato this season.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one. I don't think I don't know if it's down to the team. I don't think it's down to the team at all. I think it could just be the era that we're in. I obviously don't know what they're doing to push the boundaries of everything possible. I don't know what each manufacturer is. I mean, I'm just one race in, so I don't know. I'm still. I got a whole bunch of reading to do this week about the hybrid system at a road course because it's 1,000 times different, and it's going to be a real challenge for me this weekend. So I got a lot of reading to do. And I'm also testing the GT3 car again the next 2 days. So I'm going to be in a race car essentially 5 of 7 days, which is nice. But definitely like a lot to learn. And honestly, the hybrid system like at St. Louis, for example, if I'm honest, really ineffective. I think for qualifying, yes, you need it to be able to fight for pole. But you couldn't regen enough to use it fully on 2 laps because we're flat in 3-4. Full throttle in 3-4 essentially is what that means. And you're not lifting enough to recharge the battery fully in 1 and 2 for a qualifying lap. So you had to time it to where like you had to use it a little bit to start your lap and then deploy all the energy out of turn 2 and then just use whatever you had left on the second lap as you regen a little bit through 1 and 2 again. So there's a lot more work at the road course because you regen in the braking. You could even manually regen in certain places, and it's much, much different. But, man, you push that button, and it really does not feel like a lot. And so on the ovals, maybe there's a rethink to it. Maybe it is small enough to where it made a difference for some people. I don't know. But for me, I don't believe it really does. It doesn't do a ton, and it is unfortunate to see the mechanical issues that have happened. But this is motorsport, too. Like, there used to be way more mechanical issues than this. So, it is what it is. I'm sure everyone's going to get better with it. Everyone's going to get used to it.
Scott Dixon said less is more in an interview that I watched. He was talking about that.
Less power. Yeah, he did talk about that, which was very interesting.
Yeah, because like you look at the result, it's like is less more, but now hearing it from you, it's like kind of the same thing he was talking about where it makes perfect sense now from the way you described it. I think that the area on ovals essentially is just these larger tracks. Like when we get back to Indianapolis, or if we were to go to like a Michigan, or if we were to go
I don't know what's going to happen at Milwaukee and Nashville. Like I just don't know how it really affects anything because, we're lifting at both places, so you're able to regen. But the power of the deploy is actually not. It's not enough to make a pass. Like it's really not. But I would say the overtaking went better than we expected at St. Louis. Like, I thought the racing was way better than people thought.
Fantastic.
And it does contribute a little bit, right? Like, when you get a run and you hit the button and you deploy everything, like, you can feel it, but it's not something to where, like, if you're both on it, you're like, you still have to, the run still comes from you efficiently navigating the corner best, right? And then if you use the hybrid boost to maybe clear the other guy, or you use the hybrid boost to get out of the pits more efficiently when you get off the pit speed limiter, there's that. So that's all stuff that we're new to. I do hope it gets better.
Yeah.
Huh?
Very surgical situations, I feel like, is where it'll be used heavily.
Like, you absolutely got to use it, but even on fuel saving, like, you can't use it. So, like, when you're trying to fuel save hard, you're just sitting there with a full battery the whole time. So, like, it's kind of one of those things that, you wish that maybe you could use the deploy to kind of save some pace. But instead, it does actually burn more fuel. So it's kind of an odd deal, but it is what it is. So I think that's pretty much Gateway. That kind of wraps it up. There was a lot that went on. Obviously, a lot of debate.
How was the fan interaction, by the way? I do want to ask, just kind of outside of the race scene, like they always put on a great show at Worldwide Technology Raceway.
It was great.
Yeah,
really good. Crowd at the autograph session was awesome. Really good people there. I brought Speed Street stickers finally, but I forgot to bring them to the autograph session, of course, because I had not done an autograph session since the 500. So, was there a fellow with a Speed Street shirt on? Yeah, we saw one person, and thank you, sir, for being there. Had some rip-off Speed Street merch. So let me tell everyone something. Do not buy anything on the internet that does not come directly from my channel or Dirty Mo's channels or no, none of that is real. Like, all these people fall for it on Facebook. Facebook is just the worst place for people falling for scams.
Very
sadly,
gullible social media spot.
Like, people create my name, and you can do that because that's the internet, and they tag everyone in my comments. And they're like, oh, buy some shirts here. And they're like, they're not great shirts, but like, people are like, oh, cool. Like, he tagged me personally. So I am not doing that. Like, I am not going to tag you personally and say, please buy these shirts. That's just never going to happen. No one does that on the internet. I'm sorry. No athlete, no celebrity, nothing. So unless that link comes from a verified account like me or Dirty Mo Media, or Chase, because like Chase is probably going to have we're going to have probably merch at some point, and we're going to put it out there. Do not trust it. Do not let these idiots on the internet who are scamming people win. Do not let them win. We do not want to give them money. And so, yes. So anyway, this guy, appreciate you getting that shirt and trying to rep for us, but that was definitely a scam. So I don't know who's ripping off Speed Street merch, but someone is, but it was cool to see.
We're going to get on it, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah, we got to get some merch. We got to get real merch links. Yeah, we got to get real merch links. Great to see people. And I thought the crowd was honestly really good. There was a couple of moments where you're like, yeah, there's a couple open seats, but like, it was a great crowd. I do believe that. Someone questioned the crowd at one point. I don't believe. I think it was better than the year before. Honestly, the crowd. This year was better than the year before. So it was cool to see. But yeah. We now have Portland. So Portland, not the most exciting city in the world. Not going to lie, not my favorite place in the world.
Dream of the 90s.
Not my favorite place. But a track that has victimized me in many ways with Turn 1, with catching on fire in the pits, all kinds of things. So hoping that, goodness gracious, we can finally turn the luck around. I mean, holy crap, we got to get something going here. That would be really nice. Just have something go well. That would be cool. So a lot to learn from me this weekend. Chase, let's maybe get to some podium predictions here for Portland before we get to our interview with Joseph Newgarden. I know this show has probably gone on a long time, but we want to make sure that I just wanted to get a lot out there and talk to people about how how this race worked out, what played out, and my perspective of it. So with that, let's talk a little bit about Portland. Last road race of the season, crazy Turn 1. I know over the years they've moved the start zone back a little bit so we could maybe clear things out before we get to Turn 1, so that'll be interesting. But Chase, I'm going to let you lead it off here. Would you like to give your top 3, in no particular order, picks for the Portland the bitnile.com Grand Prix. Oh, who would have thought? I recognize that.
Yes, I would. I would love to give these picks. First off, I think it's a no-brainer. You predicted Alex Palou. You still think he's going to win a championship? I got to look to Alex Palou this weekend at Portland. I feel like this is going to be one of this is the last road course race that we have on the schedule. So I could easily see Alex Palou and their squad executing this weekend. He'll probably be the favorite. So no surprise there. On the other side of it, I'm going to turn to Colton Herta. I'm going to add Herta to my podium predictions. I think maybe one of the first times I've added him on the road courses. So we did see him dominate at Toronto. See if they can carry that momentum into Portland. It's kind of close to Canada, so we'll see. Aside from that, I'm going to go outside of the box. I was going to say Scott Dixon, and I feel like I'm probably gonna regret not having him on my podium.
Yes, you will.
Predictions this week, but I'm gonna go with something pretty crazy. I'm gonna say maybe not too crazy. I'm gonna go with Felix Rosenqvist. I'm gonna say Felix maybe finds a way to get up front, get close, and maybe we got a wild card road course winner right here towards the end of the season. So yeah, those are my picks.
Those are some good picks. I want to diversify as well. I'm going to start off. I'm going to start off with Marcus Armstrong. I'm going to start off with Marcus Armstrong. I think he's going to be on the podium. I think the Ganassi cars are probably going to be very good. Hard to not see Alex Palou winning this by a lap, but I'm still going to do it. I'm going to do Alex Palou, and I'm going to do Marcus Armstrong, and I do believe that my heart and science and math tell me that Penske could have an easy chance at winning this race. Joseph might do it, but I'm going to still pick an MSR car. I am going to go with David Malukas on the podium here. I'm going to put him on the podium. It's going to be, I mean, he has been on a charge. That team is doing incredibly well. So David Malukas, Marcus Armstrong, Alex Palou for me. Kind of a wild card round. I really want to pick Will Power. I think Will Power is easily going to be on the podium. I think, how do you not pick Scott McLaughlin? But guess what? We're going to be different because I want to have fun. I want to have fun with my picks, and I want to maybe see some gambling. I want to see some excitement. Not gambling because we're not allowed to gamble. I am not allowed to gamble. We don't encourage anyone to gamble. But Chase can do it. And I like to get a little bit different with the picks. So
I do it on my own time. I explain to people. I like to go, like, they had some people out there. They were like, you seemed upset that Joseph Newgarden won the race. I'm like, no, Joseph's a homie. I was like, it's not that. It's just, it's very hard for me coming from NASCAR land where you have guys that are like 10-1 that do it all the time, and then you have to go down to these very, very short numbers. So that's really all it is. I like big prizes, big pots, you know.
So we mentioned a little bit briefly there the Meyer Shank Racing team. So today, just to cover a little bit of news before we get to Joseph, it was kind of announced like unofficially, but sort of officially. But if you don't know, Meyer Shank Racing is going to be, instead of paired with Andretti Global, they're going to be paired with Chip Ganassi Racing. So there is going to be a bit of a funneling of drivers to. I believe you'll see a shift because of how the charter system is going to work. I believe that partnership allows Mike to probably still get the support that I believe that he has used very efficiently, but also just allows maybe Chip Ganassi to move his chess pieces on the board a little bit. So that's going to be a partnership that we're going to see next year. Which will be very interesting. A lot of interesting meetings that I saw take place that I won't discuss, but I saw some owners walking into other owners' haulers. You know what I mean? Some people walking into, have some meetings. I'm like, it's an interesting one. So again, stay tuned for that. I think there's going to be some more wild news approaching, and we'll go from there. So. With that, let's get to our interview with Joseph Newgarden, the most recent winner in our racing series. And then we will come back for a Ricky Treadway Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week. Well, folks, this week we have a guest on the show who has been on the show before, a multi-time winner, Indy 500 champion back to back, no big deal. A man that is heavily debated on the internet, which did not used to be the case. This is a man that I feel like people are either for or they are charging at him with hacksaws and rakes and like weird lawn equipment, like throwing lawn chairs. But he also found the password to his Twitter account last night. If everyone saw that, that was exciting to see. Congrats. Josef Newgarden back on Twitter and also here with us as our most recent race winner. Joseph, how are you feeling? Are you feeling good? What's the vibes like right now?
I'm good, pal. I'm really good. It's good. Man, I always love hearing from you. I love listening to you. My wife had to take me off of Twitter yesterday. She said I was done after like 4 hours. I had a really good time. I'm like never on social media anymore. And, you know, it was like the first time I've picked that up in a long time. And it was fun. It was fun to interact with people. So I'll probably try and do that a little bit.
Yeah.
More.
Well, see, I learned recently though, now there were a lot of happiness and positive responses. Now I noticed you didn't really necessarily dive too deep into probably what else, the other side of what was going on there, because I do that a lot, and I got in big trouble for that 2 weeks ago. So I'm glad you weren't on social media then, because you would have been laughing. But what brought that on? We're going to get into the race, but all of a sudden, Joseph back on Twitter, kind of a funny activity. I think people were a bit surprised. Was that just like we needed to get into the weeds here a little bit and start talking to some people?
I got to be honest. I was just in a good mood, and I thought, you know, let me get on here. And the amount of burner accounts that are out there now, it has like quadrupled from the last time that I spent any time there. Like, there's just a billion burner accounts that people are ready to.
You dive deep into their posts, and it's like, wait, this person has only ever posted twice, and they don't follow anyone. They're just here to talk terrible things.
It's insane. It's insane. So I didn't interact with too many burner accounts, but I just tried to, you know, I was like, I'm a very internalized person. I'm normally pretty quiet. You know me, like I'm actually a bit of an introvert. I can be extroverted, but I like my time at home. And I just go silent with anything, whether it's good or bad. And I'm finding that just being silent somehow doesn't. It does not work. So you got to have like a middle ground there. So I just thought, look, I'll get on there. I was in a good mood. I thought it'd be fun. And I actually enjoyed myself. And then I was told that I had to stop, that I had enough fun for the day. And so I'll try and make it maybe a weekly thing, maybe a bi-weekly thing. We'll see.
I think that would be perfect. You make it to where like you just have like maybe a Tuesday. I think a Tuesday, like 1 p.m. Eastern
to
time.
1:15, yeah.
For like maybe an hour to 2 hours. I think that, and then everyone will know it, and like they'll be there. You know what I mean? That'll be the time.
I like the idea. I'm definitely going to take that to heart. We'll see. I'll keep it going.
All right.
Well, there was a lot to talk about, Joseph. There was a motor racing event that took place under the terrible sunlight that blinded everyone to 3-4 for the majority of the race, and I thought that was horrific. But there was
out to the loop.
There was a lot that I think I want to get into, because Penske again looked extremely dominant. Like to be honest, I know that it was a very close fight for pole. David Malukas was really strong. Felix Rosenquist was really strong, but there's still something about the way your guys' cars drive that looks wildly different to like what David Malukas had, because he's almost hitting the wall and trying to qualify on the front row. You guys are smooth as silk, right? Smooth as silk. Did you guys feel like what you had at Gateway? Because again, in the race, it looked like the three cars that were literally in a completely different zone than the others were the Penske cars. Did you feel like it was a bit like Iowa back in the day when you guys were complete dominance? Did it kind of have that vibe?
A little bit. I would say less so compared to Iowa, because there was a lot of other really good cars. You know, like if you're asking me my assessment, and I'm not just saying this because this is your show, but like you looked really good. I saw a couple onboards back. You guys looked very strong. You were kind of strong right out of the gate. Ericsson looked really good. I thought he was super strong in the beginning. Pato was definitely going to be a threat the entire race until he had his issue. So, you know, there was a lot of people across the board that looked good on the night. I think what made it most entertaining was, one, we had 2 lanes, which was incredible. They actually held in pretty well. They weren't full 2 lanes, but they were like partially there for most of the race. And then the second thing was people kind of got on these divergent strategies, right? Or the strategies did diverge. And then because you were able to go somewhere, you had the cars that were running fast, just able to pass people. And it made the race fun and entertaining. And I think even if you wanted a battle for the lead, like the track was producing that. So not quite Iowa level, but a lot closer, which I think surprised everybody.
Yeah,
I didn't even answer your question about our cars.
What? No, it's
I
fine.
didn't answer your question. I
it
will
doesn't
answer
look
that.
fair, honestly.
Yeah, no.
It looks fascinating.
No, our cars
there's a
were
lot of
very
wheel
good.
movement. Like, for example, yes. No, for example, when you watch Colton Herta, right? He's like, "Oh, put in a good first lap," and then all of a sudden, and Kyle Kirkwood look like they're fighting with ninja swords in the vehicle. Like their hands are all over the place. They're doing the wax on, wax off type thing. Like it's wild. And again, everyone is kind of able to produce close to the same lap time because it was a very tight fight for pole. But then when you look at the race, like again, I got lapped about 100 million times because I had no rear floor on the car anymore. So I got to see you guys when you come past me. And I'm like, wow, there's like Penske. And then David was there. And then it was like, okay. And then you guys, what I noticed too, you mentioned 2 lanes. I thought 2 lanes were active on the starts and restarts. Yes. But you guys were literally running lane 2 and 3-4. And it looked very simple. And I actually did not know that was happening. When I saw you come by later in the race, you guys were up in that second lane. And I don't know how that was possible because every time I got up there, I thought I was going to die. But that has to be why you guys are so good. You spread out the workability of the racetrack and you can kind of go where you need to go because that's how you make passes and that's how you get through traffic.
Yeah, I mean, look, I saw some other guys using it. I saw you use it on restarts. I see what you're saying, though. No, I definitely like throughout the stint is different than on the restarts when they sweep. But our cars are super good. I mean, people ask us, they always ask me, like, why are you guys finding such success on ovals? And I mean, you know this, you can't hide behind deficiencies on the ovals. Like the car has to be doing the right things at the right time. It's got to be comfortable to you. You can't outwork the thing like a road and street course where you can make up some of the difference on the oval. You have to be doing a good job and you have to drive the car, but if the car is not doing it, it's kind of hard to will it. So our cars have always been really good. You know, your point about we do have a distinctive difference. Like if you watch our onboards, you know, the philosophy of our race cars and that the way they produce grip and then the way they feel as far as the feedback to the steering wheel, it's really different than what you see on the grid. It is. And sometimes there's negativity that comes from that. That's what I would say to temper that discussion. But, you know, when it's working, it does work very well. I think our short oval package has been super stellar over the last 5 years. You know, almost anywhere that we take it, any surface, it seems to work very well. So it's a credit to the team. They've worked really hard on that. They've maintained that form. And it's nice. It's nice when you show up and you have a great car underneath you. It makes us look better. It makes our job easier.
Yeah, I mean, I would say when it's on, you guys are on times 1,000. But obviously, if it was like that every weekend, you guys would win every race. But that's not been the case this year, right? It's been very competitive. It's been a very close championship. Ganassi's been very good as well. But yeah, when you guys see it, when you guys have it on these short ovals, it's very impressive to watch. Let's talk about spinning because that was right in front of me. Witnessed it with my eyes. I hit the wall there in practice the night before. I did the exact same thing you did, just trying to stay up high. I would say that, like, when you were trying to go around that car in front of you, probably a bit of a surprise that you got checked up like that and you had to go there. But getting the car spun around and then, all right, okay, we're back in the game already. I mean, did you think kind of all hope was lost at that point, or were you like, oh, no, we're good, this is fine?
When I was spinning, I thought all hope was lost. Like for a momentary second, I got very lucky. Like that's the only way that I can describe it. I was where I spun, you know, the exact moment was just kind of perfect as far as luck. The thing corrected itself. It maintained RPM. Like I didn't lose the engine. I could get going again, and I didn't really lose much out of it. So I was like, just put new tires on this thing. It'll be fine. That is what happened. I was trying to get around Pillow. You saw it, and he checked up in the middle of the corner, and I wasn't expecting it. I had to make a correction to get out of his way. Otherwise, I would have gone over the top of him. And it put me about half a car width too wide. And so that's why I wasn't worried about it either. I was like, I'm so lucky that it didn't hurt the car and we could just keep going. I knew the car was still underneath me after that.
Yeah, that was, to see that, like to see you spin and then at the end, they're like, "Oh, Joseph won." I was like, "Well, that makes sense."
That was the moment for me too. Like when I was watching, I was with you. I thought that I was like, "Wow, this isn't gonna be good." But then they're like, "Oh, he saves the car." I'm like, "Well, if he saved the car, he's gonna find a way to get it." But that just really started from an intense run between you and Scotty Mack. And I mean, you dudes are competitive with each other. Y'all known each other for a while. I feel like there's that brotherly love kind of thing is there. One thing about brotherly love that I wanted to talk about, have you talked to William Power after that race? He seemed like he was a little aggravated at you maybe on that second to last restart.
I gotta say,
he tweeted me. He actually responded to one of my Instagram comments today talking about you being a 100-meter dash runner too, which out of the blue, I don't think Will Power has ever commented on anything I've had on Instagram. So that was very funny.
Everyone's on Twitter today, huh?
Yeah, I wasn't on that. I'm not on there, so I missed all that. But Will Power is by far one of my favorite humans on the planet. I think most people feel that way about him in the paddock. Look, he is, he is all in, and when the action is going, you're going to get full intensity from Will Power in the moment. But you give Will 10, 20 minutes, he's like just the complete opposite. I mean, he comes back down to kind of earth and is present. And, I think it was, first off, it was tough what happened because, last thing that we want to see from our team is that car not make it to the finish. So it was a really terrible result for us as a group because, he got knocked out at the end. So he was very frustrated immediately. And I totally get it. He's in the championship. He lost a ton of points because of it. So I think you saw his anger and his frustration in that moment. But when things cool down and you see what happened and you actually look at the data and all these other points, he's comes back to, just being Will. So I haven't seen him yet. I think I'm going to see him this afternoon. I hope I do because I'm excited to see him. And I'm not really worried about it.
It's going to be nothing ever happened. He's one of those people that he takes it all in at 1,000%. And then it's able to wash out very fast. He's living in real time. You know what I'm saying?
He's just, look, he's got a lot of passion in a good way. He cares tremendously about what we do. He's honestly probably one of the sweetest people I've ever met in the world. If you know Will Power, if you know his heart, he's probably got the biggest heart in the paddock, if you would ask me. He's just a very good human being, but he's super passionate, and you see his passion when he races. I think it's a great thing. He's very entertaining. If I was a fan, I would want to watch Will Power because he's an entertaining person. And so I don't see it as a bad thing. I think he's always been a great thing for the sport.
Let's talk about it. The restart. There was a lot of people that had some very uninformed opinions. But there's also I'm going to talk about during this show. We're obviously recording this interview before we've done the regular show, but I kind of want to talk about it more from a driver's perspective because I think there are less than 25 humans who got to experience that restart because there were several cars out of the race. I was the very last car in line for this restart disaster. So whatever was going on was times 10 for those that were that far back. But what I think people don't realize now, again, I was not a fan of you going that late. Where we were going, and I don't think anyone was, obviously, but you are in control of that. So I guess the one thing that I have a question about is, do you think the restart zone should be made shorter? Because I do believe that if you go that late, we will see a crash almost 9 out of 10 times. But again, it is your right to do that, right? But I don't think it's as much as your fault as what people are saying, because the drivers are the ones with the gaps. The drivers behind you are the ones trying to get the jump. And I'm going to talk a lot more about this in our show, because I think it's important to explain to people the logistics of what's going on and the fact that IndyCar is making sure that they penalize people for jumping out of line, right? But do you think that there needs to be an adjustment to the restart zone? Or were you like, hey, I'm going to snooker everyone here and I'm going to be the latest restarter that's ever happened?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to break this down with you. And I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think it's you guys should break it down even further. I wish there was more information readily available to everybody, and the fans, to the commentators, to people watching this real time. You need more information in these moments to understand what really happened. It's actually extremely nuanced. When I look at all of it, it's very nuanced what happened. It only takes when someone's going that late. And so for me, I'm trying to win the race. And my decision was I'm going to go at the last minute. That was my thought process.
Racing is selfish too. Like, screw everyone else. Like, racing is selfish. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
Let me just say, this is how this works. The leader on a restart is in control of the restart. He's supposed to maintain pace car speed and then accelerate one time. Okay. And then you have a restart zone to do that in. And I'm going to go at the end of the restart zone. Sometimes I go at the very beginning of it. Sometimes I go at the middle. Sometimes you go at the very end. You have to vary this stuff if you're going to try and maintain your position on track. So that's why you don't go at the same point every time. That's why you might vary your speed slightly. Like, so if you need to pace car speed, they typically tell you 80 to 100. I might go 80 one start. I might go 90 the other. I might go 85 the next time. You're moving the RPM around just a little bit, but it needs to be stable. So
also depends on what first gear you have in the car too, right? Tell people, like, people have different first gears too. So you want to try to take advantage of that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, everybody does this stuff. This is the normal operating procedure for anyone that's driving. So yeah, to break it down, I went as late as I could. I wanted to get a good jump. I wanted to maintain our lead and win the race. And, I hope someone actually just releases the data, because it'll be so much more clear. You'll see what I did. You'll see what happened. There was a momentary bobble. I got hit actually right before I went, and that actually checked Scott up slightly. And I think that had a cascading effect. That's what it looks like when I look back on it, but that stuff can happen a little bit more when you go late. So, it's important to maintain the right gap that you need. And, if you're going to go late like that, it puts a little bit more emphasis on people jumping. The other thing that I would add into this mix, which is what complicated this whole thing, this has been an issue for the last 2 years, regardless of where people go. Say someone goes at the beginning of the zone, the middle of the end. We have had people trying to jump these restarts aggressively for the last 2 seasons, and it has been a topic in the driver meeting every single time. So I just think you have a predisposition for a lot of people's mindsets that they're trying to jump that perfectly. And if you have any little checkup in the line, when everybody's in that mentality, the likelihood or the opportunity for something like this to happen is much higher. Yeah,
I think, and again, I still want to ask more about the race and stuff like that. And I'm going to explain this probably in a way that people won't like, because it's going to sound like that, again, it's more on everyone else as drivers. Yes, it was, like, I believe, and I will say this to you, like, yeah, going that late, kind of a dick move, but like you are the winner and I am not. So that's what makes this sport difficult, right? And as someone who I guess was the last car in line for that restart, I literally was on the brakes. Like, I was full throttle in third gear, essentially already ripping in the middle of 3-4, and you haven't even accelerated yet. But that's what happens when the cars slightly kind of, go separate a little bit, and one car goes, and then the other car goes, and then the other car goes, because they're trying to make those gaps smaller. And it's something that, again, it's I don't believe that it's like, hey, we need to blame Joseph for this. I'm sorry, because that's just not the case. Like, if you went at the very end of the restart zone, like, I get it, and I get why people are upset, because shoot, I was almost involved in that crash too, because we barely missed it. But it's just something that I think needs to be explained, that it is on everyone, and it's so difficult to pass nowadays that you have to get the jump. And I don't know. I mean, is there anything else that you want to add to that, other than like, this is just kind of a racing scenario that it did not work out very well for a lot of people?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Look, I can see why it didn't work out. It only takes one little minor checkup at the front for that to go to a disaster, and you can see where it happened. When I look back at it now, I see where that little tiny checkup happened. But I think if you see the data, you're going to see like, oh, okay, it was just a consistent speed, and he's going to go at the very last moment on the end of the restart zone. If it's everybody's job in line to be watching, and if someone doesn't go in front of you, for instance, if it's green, it doesn't mean you can just plow into them. So you can't just reference the car directly in front of you as well. Like, that's just, it's how it works. That's why you see people jump out of line all the time because they're trying to get these big jumps. But to answer your question, we're given a zone, right? And they give you this reference zone. It's like it's a light gray area that they paint on a track map. They show it, right? Maybe
and it's not like NASCAR, to where NASCAR, it's the Geico restart zone. There it is. Like, we don't have that on the wall. Yeah, we don't have that on the wall. So people are kind of have to trust that we know that where we're at. You know what I mean?
That's the big word too. I was going to say, like, you have to make sure that these guys, like, you want to field your field. You have to be accountable. Like, everyone has to be accountable in that. So there is some degree of communication that has to happen there in some way, shape, or form. And so I just think that's. I feel like it's a lot more simple than what people make it, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks what happened, to be honest. I'll just say this, too, from my side. Like, the last thing that I want to see happen in that situation is what happened. I mean, I've done a lot of restarts from the front, and I bury it every time. I'm not trying to ever go at the same point. You're trying to move it in the zone like we talked about. And the last thing I was trying to do was to cause a problem that puts my teammate out of it. I wanted to win the race, so I'm trying to go as late as possible. I thought that was the right move for our car to win the race. And, it's unfortunate that what happened, took place. But I tend to agree with you. Maybe there's an adjustment that's needed. Maybe we put something that's actually visibly marked. You put a mark on the wall, you put a cone out, and then everybody knows, like, okay, if someone's going to go at the last minute, this is the last point that they can go. And then everybody gets used to that too. It's just tough. You're not going to get a perfect answer for this right now. I mean, it's been a problem the last couple of years, and I think a lot of it's down to the mentality of what people are trying to do, and they're trying to get as big of a jump as they can. Most people in line are trying to do that, and that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, exactly, and I think, and again, I'm going to talk about it a bunch more and try to explain to people, at least, like, everyone can make their own. Like, obviously, everyone's entitled to what they think of it. That's cool, but there are still, there's no one that's going to be able to understand what that's like to feel the accordion of an IndyCar restart, right? Because we are all trying to be super aggressive, and you are the one maintaining the speed. The guy behind you is probably going like, like trying to be, trying to get ready to go there. So although you might not be making the move to change your acceleration, everyone behind is. So I think that it's quite a debate. Obviously, there was a lot going on. And it created a crazy accident, but just wanted to, I appreciate your thoughts on that. And I think, again, we don't have SMT like NASCAR did when they had the Austin Dillon thing and they just put out all the stuff like, hey, here's this throttle, here's this steer. I think that would be helpful. I think that would be cool if IndyCar would be able to do that and be like, hey, guys, because again, I believe IndyCar did.
I think they should.
IndyCar looked at the data. Is that correct?
I feel like
they did look at something and they said, hey, we saw that there was no change in pace. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I wonder. Yeah. I think they should put something out. They should put something else also just for the league, because
1,000%.
Then you understand their decision process. Obviously, they're saying, look, we've reviewed everything. Here's our standards. This is what the person did. But if you just post the data, it's really cut and dry then. And then no one has any confusion about it. It's, I just think that a little transparency goes a long way, and that would help this situation. It'd help a lot of other situations too. So, it's not my call, but I'm with you. I think they should just put something out.
Right on. Well, let's talk more about the race. I think a lot of people were expecting it, maybe, and I know the driver, there's a rumor that it might have been, it might not be the greatest race. I would say the racing was better than I thought. I would say I saw more cars side by side than I thought. I would say you guys were running far higher on the track than I think people expected. And I actually thought the racing was quite decent. Kind of crazy that the way the yellows fell, like, we ran out of tires. We got it spun, obviously had to use a set of tires, but like a 4, maybe 5 pit stop race is kind of crazy. We don't really see that outside of the Indianapolis 500. But were you impressed with how the racing was and how the tire, I guess, played into the event?
I mean, look, obviously I enjoyed the show. I mean, we won the race, so I'm happy about it, but I don't think you're going to get much of a better product at Gateway. I think the only way you'd elevate it even further is if we start 2 hours later. We want a nighttime race. If it cools off even more, then you're going to get even more side by side racing. So I thought the package was pretty dang good. and we've needed some time here. Obviously, everybody's been watching as we've introduced the hybrid system. The weight's gone up, the tires adjusting slightly because of it. So we're trying to tune this package in. I think from a gateway standpoint, they got it as good as you can get it. And I think that gives hope for the next ovals like Milwaukee and Nashville that we can get it figured out too.
Yeah, I am very excited, obviously, because I get to participate. But, the fact that we've got some ovals left, I think, and seeing how good the racing was at St. Louis is very encouraging. But we've got Portland in front of you now. Obviously, last road course. Your championship battle, probably, still a bit of a steep mountain to climb. How are you? If you win out, obviously that's the only thing, that is probably like super great. You can technically still win it if you win all the rest of the races. Is that correct?
Yeah. We're not near mathematically out of it, but realistically, I would say we're definitely not in the fight. Crazier things have happened. I think the dagger for us was really Toronto, and the dagger was like slowly getting put into our body like before Toronto. It was just every round,
a rusty dagger. Yeah, it was here you go. Yeah, yikes.
It just kept building, and Toronto was like almost the last straw. I'm like, wow, okay, now it's really almost impossible for us to turn this thing around. But to your point, we're not mathematically out of it. I think for us in the 2-car, we gotta try and finish the year on a high note. It's been a super messy up and down season in so many ways. And so I would like to, for us to finish on a high note going into 2025. We'll see what can happen. I think Portland's really critical for us. We've had great cars there. Luke has done such a good job. I think we've had, and he'll say this too, we've probably had winning race cars there the last 3 years, and it's not materialized. So, for one reason or another, we've got to figure out how to transform that and convert a result. And then we'll see what happens in Milwaukee and Nashville. But I'm excited for the finale in this stretch. I think we can still do some damage.
I love that. Chase, go ahead. I'm going to let you jump in here.
Yeah, big thing that I wanted to ask you too, man, because I'm a bit of one of those racing fortune tellers, and I try to predict what's going to happen. And so coming from
what he
Iowa,
says by that is he's a gambler. He's just a gambler.
A little bit. So in coming from Iowa, man, I'm not going to lie. I felt like when we unveiled the new hybrid car and seeing you, I felt like you maybe had a little bit of more of a struggle on an oval, and that was very uncharacteristic of you. And coming into Worldwide Technology Raceway, you were able to, obviously we had some yellows, and you were able to really just show some master chess skills at being able to use that to your advantage, you and the team working together. What has been the biggest difference, I guess, with this new car on the ovals, and what really changed between Iowa and Gateway for you personally?
Well, Iowa's pretty simple. It ended up turning into qualifying only. That's just the truth of it. If there was one weekend where qualifying was going to matter, it was Iowa, and we had a disastrous qualifying session. So that was our story on our car. It sort of ruined our weekend. And it was unfortunate. Iowa's always been a very good race. It was repaved, and then it was also the first time we'd been to an oval with this new hybrid package that you talked about. So there were so many variables going into that event, and it wasn't raceable. So, if I had somewhere to go, I'm very confident we could have won both Iowa races. And, that sounds maybe a little too confident, but I know what I had underneath me. And if I just had somewhere to go, I could have made something happen. Next year, I hope we can figure out that situation, get us 2 lanes back. I think Gateway, we sort of turned the corner on this hybrid package, at least on an oval. I think on the 2-car, we can make it work. But you're seeing the strength of Team Penske there too. I think we have such strength as a team right now that Connor alluded to with our short oval package that, as long as you get your ducks in a row and you execute, you're going to be there or thereabouts. So yeah, it's an adjustment period all around. Iowa's one part of it. And then let's see how we get on in Portland. I think that'll be very telling for 2025. And, I'm optimistic. Look, if we don't have it sorted out, we're so good on this 2-car. They're just the best. I know they are. I know what they're capable of. We will get it figured out. If it's not figured out yet, we will get there eventually.
Yeah, I saw the craziest pit stop of all time. Your guys doing this insane work. Looked like a bunch of wizards in the pit lane. There are 5 seconds or whatever they had. I was obviously a short fill of fuel, so you didn't need the full tank of fuel. But man, every piece matters, and when you guys need to nail it, there's no arguing with the hammer is hitting that nail. So it's pretty impressive to see what was going on there.
Yeah, it was the same at Indy. I think one of our probably our best stop was the final stop of the race where it mattered. We were the quickest on pit lane from what I remember.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, they crush it, and it is all the details when they come together. I mean, you can't leave any stone unturned, and they're, if I make a mistake, they pull me up, and vice versa. If we have a bottle somewhere else, I try and make a difference, but we pull together really well as a team. That final pit stop, you saw Caitlin Brown on inside front. She is like lightning. I think she's the only female over the wall right now changing the tire, but she is light. I hope I'm not wrong on that. I don't know if that's confirmed, but I know she's one of the...
We can't fact check you on that.
Yeah.
We don't know. Yeah.
I know she's one of the very few, and she is incredibly fast. And I don't want to just single out Caitlin because it's our whole team. Everybody's very good. You got like Keenan on the right rear. Keenan's got to be like the fastest right rear changer on pit lane. He's normally done before everybody, and he has to run out to the car. He's like nuts.
Crazy,
he's normally
man.
Walking off before anyone else is done. He's absolutely nuts if you watch one of our pit stops. So yeah, it's nice. Like, it's just nice to know that you can bank on these members when you come into the pits. It makes the difference on a lot of these races, whether you're going to win it or not.
It shows a ton.
All right, one more question before I let you go, because I know we've spent some great time together. I know you have a vacation to get to today. Maybe not a vacation, but maybe a relaxing afternoon. We had this question come up in our last week's show, and there was a lot of debate because it's Olympic season, and I don't know if you enjoyed any Olympic sports while we were in the summer break, but what driver would win the 100-meter dash, the IndyCar driver's 100-meter dash? Will said that you were very fast today in my Instagram comments. I had given a couple opinions. I think there are people that really want to see this happening. But what do you think? Are you? I said you were too top heavy. Honestly, that's what I said. I said you were too top heavy. So that was I didn't give you that winning run. But what do you think?
You might be right. I don't know. I've not run a 100-meter. I'm working on some really odd goals this offseason. Like, I want to run a 400-meter in like a very impressive time, and same with the 800. The 100, that's a pure sprint, right? You're going to be like 10, 12 seconds. I mean, 10 seconds would be like world record pace.
If you think you're going to be 10 seconds, that would be wild. Like, you could be in the Olympics, dude.
What level of confidence
you'd out-qualify half the world.
I don't know. I'm always like very ambitious whenever I try and do something, but I would think it'd be
10 seconds.
I feel like you have to have that if you're going to go places in life. So
look, it only takes a 10-9.
10 seconds.
It takes a 10-9, Connor, to be a 10-second. Okay, so that's all you got to focus on. It's
that's
just getting
true.
in the bracket, but
just like the quarter mile. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting to have like a an Olympic type day with everybody, and let's see where we all stack up. I love this stuff, so I'd be all for it.
Yes.
Give us one name though. You got to give a name. You have to have an opinion. Give us a name of a driver.
I honestly, I've never seen anybody sprint, so I don't know who's good at sprinting. It's not my teammates. I've seen them sprint. It's not them. I heard Felix Rosenqvist is fast. I don't know that I believe that. But
really?
Someone told me that.
Right.
I don't know.
That's not who I expected. I'm not going to lie. That is not who I expected, but we'll go with Felix. All right. That's your guess.
I've never
Felix
seen it with my eyes.
Felix is going to run 10.8. Yeah. It's going to run 10.8.
Incredible.
I appreciate that. We do need to do, like, I remember in my school, we had field day is what it was called. We did all these different sports, and it was fun. Maybe there needs to be an IndyCar field day, and we just get out there and we start throwing javelins, those big metal balls that you kind of whip out there.
MXD, unlimited style. Like, do you remember Spike
That's true
TV?
As well, yeah.
MXD?
You have to do it over a river, yeah.
Don't get eliminated, dude. I want to do that for the whole series, dude. Like, let's go all in. I'm ready.
It needs to happen. I agree with you guys. I think that people want it.
Well, we got to get people to watch the racing somehow, considering we get bumped to CNBC every weekend. So anyway, we're gonna get to Joseph having a nice afternoon. We appreciate you. And again, there's a lot of conflicting opinions, and I know that I wanted to get into it. We appreciate you kind of breaking it down for people because again, we're just trying to feed people the information that is out there and that they might not understand. So thank you, Joseph, and I will see you this weekend in Portland.
See you guys soon. Take care.
All right. So Joseph Newgarden. Hopefully that clears up some thoughts about at least taking in some information from those that actually were participating, and feel free to do with it what you like. It's again, there's a lot of opinions that you could have, but there's also like what is actually real and like what data is and what motorsport is. So there are 26 unhappy drivers with how that race went, and there's only one happy one, and that's Joseph Newgarden. So
he has nothing to hide, though. At least, I mean,
nothing to hide.
He wants to put it out there. He wants the world to know. I think that's commendable.
Yeah. So we obviously previewed, Portland a little bit with our podium picks. We are on USA Network once again this weekend. At least we hope so. We will try our best to avoid rain delays of sorts. We'll see what happens, but Portland is up next on USA Network on a Sunday. I don't have the exact time, but you guys know where to find it. It'll be Portland on Sunday, probably around the afternoon. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But let's get to the Ricky Treadway Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week.
Oh yeah,
the greatest event of its kind has never been run off.
Let's meet the drivers. Who will make up the field?
This week, we went deep into the archives, very deep into the archives, and I think I found a great one. I really do. The 1930 Indianapolis 500. The 1930 Indianapolis 500 was won by Billy Arnold. Billy Arnold could be its own random Indy 500 Driver of the Week, but I found someone by the name, and this is on the results sheet, P19, Roland Free. Roland Free, F-R-E-E, finished 19th, which is, I think, very astounding because, boy, if you type in his name into the Wikipedia, Roland Free, race car driver, Chase, if you want to check that out, there are some hilarious photographs of this man. Do you see what I'm looking at right now?
I'm trying. So I'm looking. So I know you say Roland Free. I see Raleigh Free.
Yeah. So on Wikipedia, it's Rolly Free.
Roland Free.
I don't know what's going on here, but
wow.
Roland Free was born in 1900. Died in 1984, was an American motorcycle and automobile racer known for breaking the American motorcycle land speed record in 1948 in the Bonneville Salt Flats. A picture of Free, prone and wearing a bathing suit, has been described as the most famous picture in motorcycling. So I mean, if you guys Google this, it's astounding what's going on here. The guy's like trying to be aerodynamic. Roland Robert Free. So after an early career in motorcycle retail, Free became a regional racer in the 1920s and 30s on Indian motorcycles. In 1923, Free tried out for his first national motorcycle race, the 100-mile national championships on the board track, which we talked about before, in Kansas City, but did not qualify. That's crazy. So raced at Daytona. I'll let you read a little bit more about him, but this whole motorcycle, he looks like he's trying to be aerodynamic on the motorcycle. He's basically just doing a Superman.
Dude, this dude was a wild man, bro. I mean, he essentially had his meds on the top of the back fender of the motorcycle, just laying there resting as he is just zooming down the way. It looks like somewhere in a desert. This
salt flats. Yeah,
this may be who Hunter S. Thompson was writing Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas about. Maybe it wasn't himself. Maybe it was this guy. But yeah, he was in the Air Force. He was a maintenance officer during the Second World War. So, a lot of war dogs, wild guys,
veterans.
Like, time. But he laid down on these bikes quite a bit. He was he was debated whether the exact model of motorcycle was a Black Lightning or a Black Shadow, but it was a custom ordered one. So big motorcycle guy, got into the cockpit of a car. Things maybe changed a little bit, but dude, this guy right here, I mean,
crazy photograph. You guys got to look this up. This is a wild one.
Have we seen anybody race like this on motorcycle?
I don't think so.
This guy?
I don't think so. I mean, it looks hysterical, if I'm honest, and it looks very painful for the gentleman's area, if I'm also honest. Like, very painful for that. 2 Indy 500s to this incredible human's career, a 1930, and then honestly, kind of crazy. He did 1930, but then 17 years later, he raced in the Indianapolis 500 again, 1947. So that's also astounding. I don't think I've ever seen that much of a gap between one Indy 500 to the next. Never finished either of them. His best finish is 17th. But yeah, what a wild... You got to look this guy up. This is a crazy story. Roland Free.
He wanted to fly. There was no doubt about it. This man had a vision. He had a dream of flying. If you would have let him race in an Indy car where he just had a board to lay on and drive, dude, he may have won. Dude. I'm just gonna say.
I love learning stuff. We're learning stuff every weekend. That was really cool. I do no research for this other than go to a year, pick a driver that I don't know of, pick a name that I don't know. So we learn something new. Out. Very exciting. So anyway. Thank you, folks, again. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our podcast on all the platforms, Spotify, Apple. Share it with a friend, maybe. Hey, look, this is a podcast that we listen to.
Leave a review.
We appreciate those folks. Appreciate everyone who was at St. Louis. We appreciate everyone that's going to be at Portland. And then we are going to get to talk to the winner of the Portland, the Grand Prix of Portland, we'll call it, in next week's show. While we also get ready to go straight to another race. So very, very back-to-back now. It's crazy. It's busy. Had Sunday off, went to James Hinchcliffe's house. Had a nice time. Got in the pool. Had a couple beverages with James. And we did a bit of relaxing. But now I'm back in a race car tomorrow in the GT3 car at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So maybe, I don't know if it's open to the public, but feel free to go check it out because we're going to be testing GT3 cars there the next couple days. So that'll be fun. But this show will release on Wednesday morning. So therefore, you won't hear this in time. But we shall see what happens. So anyway, thank you all. And we will see you next week on Speed Street. Hey everyone, Connor Daly here. Please leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, and also subscribe to the channel as well. That would be very helpful. Be a friend, tell a friend. Thank you so much for the support, and we'll see you on the next episode of Speed Street.